Hello, I'm Vicki Alexander Harriet from the Marshall University of Management. I'd like to share with you a four-part series taken from our symposium on Deep Green Business, Transforming Consciousness to Ensure Sustainability and Create Heaven on Earth. The premise of our symposium was that there must be a transformation of consciousness in order to truly embed sustainability in our companies and in our society. How can this transformation take place? What are the mechanics of implementing change? How have businesses and communities facilitated transformation, and what are the results of such a transformation? Join us for a discussion of these and other questions as we explore the role of consciousness in creating sustainable business and a sustainable world. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a fabulous symposium on deep green business and the transformation of consciousness.
Our guest speaker today is Professor Siwu Yu, and he is professor at the Capital University of Economics and Business in China, where he's also the editor of their business magazine and scholarly papers. And he's a well-published researcher in the area of green consumption in China, and he's going to be presenting some of that research today. And there was a particular project that was funded by the World Bank, as you can see here, the Beijing Low Carbon Development Studies. And I was requested by Professor Yu to participate in that research as a foreign expert to report something about low carbon practices in American cities. There was also a Japanese expert who contributed to the study, but most of the research was done by Professor Yu, and his research assistant did a lot of number crunching and econometric analysis and stuff like that, so he's got charts to show. Well, in China, excuse me, there is a practice called guanxi, which is that you meet people, and if you make a friendship, then you have mutual friendship and gifts to give each other. So Professor Yu was already a friend of Professor Qi, and when I was introduced, we were immediately bonded. He said, I want you to sign a paper that says you agree to do research with me. The very first day we meet, I said, I'm happy to do that. I didn't know what would come of it, though, but there we go. And then he contacted me and he said, I'd like my daughter to come to the United States and study green architecture. She just finished her bachelor's degree in architecture. Anyway, without further ado, here's Professor Yu.
Very thanks for Dr. Hazen's introduction, and thanks Professor Vicki invited me to join you to the conference. I'm a professor of management, teaching operations management, quality management in my university, CUEB. Last year we did a World Bank project. It's the beginning of the cooperation in scientific research between the CUEB and MUF. So it's my pleasure to introduce the research work in the Fairfield. The team of the World Bank project is an international team. The main cooperator is Professor Dennis Heaton. He made a great contribution in the Green Index and experience of green consumption in the United States. Another cooperator is Professor Yukihiro at IG University in Japan. He's a professor of marketing. His research area is green consumption, especially in low carbon department store. There are more than 10 teachers and more than 20 graduate students joined our team. The process of the research included 4 stages. Just before 2 years ago, July 7th, the same day, we submitted a letter of interest. It's the beginning of the research. On the 29th of July 2010, we received the notification. That means we got the project. Then signed the contract in September, and the open beginning. the opening meeting. The early research stage is survey on green consumption. Then write the report, revision once time. The last station is review, include export review and Beijing government review and the final employer review. The export review focuses on the academic points. The government review focuses on the policy, if it's suitable with Beijing government policy and the statistic data is correct. And the final employer review focuses on the objectives. The final report is the 10th edition. The period includes 10 months. Do the research, we have to answer 4 questions. The first 4 questions. The first, what is green consumption? The second, what the status of the green consumption in Beijing? And third, how to evaluate the green consumption? And what shall we do in promote green consumption in Beijing? Now the first question, what is the green consumption? Maybe also I can call sustainable consumption. It's only a part of consumption. It especially means purchasing, using in green products and green services. What is green products or green services? Include 3 factors. The first is standard green products or green services. The second is certification, and third is green label. You can this label is China environmental labeling. This means the environmental friendly products and high quality. In the industrial products, this is energy conservation certification. It's similar with the Energy Star in the United States. And this is the energy label, include the 5 classes. Only class 1, class 2 means energy saving products. This is organic label. It's only used in food, agriculture products. For this label, China Green Hotel. The meaning of green consumption: just product structure, replace old products by energy saving products and environmental friendly products. Promote energy saving and emission reduction, improve the quality of people's life. Also, it can improve the sustainable development in China because of the consumption is a more important factor in the economic growth. But it's difficult to calculate and evaluate the green consumption because the current statistics system only refers to the general consumption data, no any green consumption data. For example, we can get the total value of the food in month from the Statistics Bureau of Beijing government, but no any data about green food, organic food, no any data. Another example, in your family, you know how much you have to pay in electric consumption, but you don't know how much is green electric consumption. No one knows. To answer this question, we have to investigate the selling, buying, and using the green products. The K to calculate and measure green consumption is to separate green consumption from total consumption. The beginning of the research into survey on green consumption included 3 fields. The urban household green consumption. We choose 1,000 urban resident household survey and select the data 5,000 residents consumption, other consumption not green consumption, because in 27 and 29 no green consumption, no any data. The second field is investigate market. How many green products sell in the market? Then the survey in special industries include auto, green building, green tours, green logistics. The second question, how can we evaluate green consumption in Beijing? We have to establish the structure of Beijing green consumption indicator systems. Mr. Dennis Heaton made a great contribution for this field. Then calculate the Beijing Green Consumption Index and to do the evaluation of Beijing green consumption. The third question, how can we analyze the current situation, potential, and influence developing green consumption in Beijing? The analysis include status analysis based on the survey, and the macro-analysis based on the CGE model. CGE means we found a factor and design some situation. For example, the electric price may be increased 3%, 5%, 8%, 10%. Then simulate what the difference in all of the industries in Beijing. Then the micro analysis is main factor analysis. The main factor include the consumer, education, the income, the policy, etc. Last one, what shall we do? What shall we submit for promoting green consumption in Beijing? What's the approach and mechanism promoting green consumption? What is the policies for promoting green consumption in Beijing for the government? And what is the action of promoting green consumption in Beijing? This is the result of the research. This is the outline of the research. We started from the survey on green consumption in urban households, in market, in special industries. Then get the data from Statistics Bureau and get some experience of green consumption from other countries. Based on the data, we do the analysis. Details about status of green consumption, green food, energy saving, electric appliances, and others. Based on CG model and MLR model. The result of the research is report status Beijing green consumption and evaluation Beijing green consumption, calculate the green index and the policy recommendations. This is the result of the research. Because of the time limited, I only introduce 2 fields. One is a survey in urban households, in market, and the other is evaluation especially in the green index. The first one, green consumption in Beijing. Based on the survey of urban household, we found water-saving appliances, especially water-saving taps, is close to 95%. That means Beijing has realized green consumption in water conservation. And energy-saving lamps has reached more than 85%. That means Beijing has realized green consumption in green lighting. In energy-saving electric appliances, the percentage energy-saving refrigerator is more than 46%. The energy-saving air conditioner is more than 36%. Energy-saving washing machine is more than 24%. Energy-saving television is more than 17%. That means the promotion major durable and energy-saving electric appliances is successful. The policies in Beijing, this policy is powerful. The condition of green travel, out of the door, maybe by foot, by bicycle, by bus, subway, by auto. In Beijing, by bicycle, take bus and subway is green travel. Riding bicycle, the person is 27%, and take bus and subway is more than 32%. This is the status of green travel in Beijing. Consciousness of green consumption in urban household, we found more than 99% respondents think energy-saving appliances is important to a green society. And more than 32% know exact meaning of green consumption. More than 71% know 1, 2, or 3 green labels. We give 6 green labels. What do you know? I know 1, know 2, know 3. We gave 5 actions in your shopping. More than 61% take 1 action, 2 action. For example, no use of plastic bags in shopping. But more than 37% threw waste batteries away. They don't understand collected the factory. And nearly 30% of respondents sell waste and old appliances to handlers. It made a pollution. The conclusion, Beijing residents began to focus on green consumption, but most of them now take action of themselves. Consciousness of green consumption in urban household is in initial stage. The green consumption most concerned about green food, green energy-saving lamps, green detergents, electric appliances, green furniture. These products is the most concern in urban household. Another big question is the price in green food. The price of rice, organic rice, the price of rice is 1.6 times of the price ordinary price. The highest is organic vegetables, the price is 3 times or 16 times is very high. Sampling survey on green consumption in Beijing indicates 86% are kept the price within 10%. With so high price not kept is the bar for the green consumption. If you can answer this question, maybe you can earn a lot of money. In the electric appliances, we found refrigerator, air conditioner, washing machine, television. The percent are more than 46%, 36%, nearly a quarter. That means promoting energy-saving electric appliances is successful. The potential increase in energy-saving appliances is huge. Maybe it's a good business opportunity. We can see this question from another side. You can list the total electricity consumed in Beijing in 2009 and 2010. The total consumption is up, but the total urban household electricity consumption in Beijing in 2009 is down. The statistics data show the quantity of the electric appliances is same 2010. That means promoting energy-saving electric appliances has made an important contribution to decrease total urban household electricity consumption in 2010. In green building, the large public building means over 20,000 meters square. The electricity consumption include air conditioner, lighting, and other used. This is the huge electric consumption in large office building, small in ordinary office building. The electricity consumption too much in the business building. The business building here, and the hotel here. So we have to focus on the energy saving in department store and the large scale business center. Here is the comparison of energy consumption in Beijing and in the United States. The total energy consumption, this line is in Beijing, this line is in the United States. We can find that this is the total energy saving, the total electricity consumption. In the United States, it's more than in Beijing. Air conditioning, the consumption in Beijing is more than that in the United States. But in the office equipment and others, United States is much more than in Beijing. In residential building, 60% to 70% energy consumption is for heating in winter. In Beijing, in winter, per meter square is 20 watt. But in North Europe, it's only 11. Why difference? The electricity use is very high and very low. The highest over 14 kilowatt hour, and the lowest smaller than 1 kilowatt hour. What is the main factor? The habits. Green habits of the using air conditioning is first. Air conditioning is only used for a certain period of time in the needed rooms. Here is the consumption of electricity in the United States, including water heating, lighting, air conditioning, home appliances, and cooking. This is a comparison between Beijing and the United States. We can find the difference in air conditioning, in all appliances, lighting, water heating, cooking, only cooking. He used more electricity. Chinese can cooking. This is the course of energy consumption. The red course is the United States. Improve your life. You use more energy. Now, saving energy. The Chinese are following United States step by step. We want to change it, but it's difficult. Perhaps we found the course A to take a new way, energy saving, at the same time improve our life. Part 2, measurement and evaluation of green consumption in Beijing. How can we evaluate the status of green consumption in Beijing? We propose a structure of Beijing green consumption indicator systems. This includes 4. The first is awareness. The second, environment. The third is behavior. The last one is performance. The core is behavior. Behavior means the action of buying and using the green products and green services. But it determines awareness. No awareness of green consumption, no action buying green products and green services. And behavior influenced by the environmental. The result is performance, the result of energy saving and emission reduction. If the system like a tree, the fruit is the result of energy conservation and emission reduction. This is my objective. But result, resources by the action. Buying, using the green products and green services. But resources of behavior is the awareness. I learned big sentences from the university. Water the root, enjoy the fruit. Performance is the fruit, and awareness is the root. The Beijing green consumption indicator system includes 4 parts. The four parts is awareness, environment, behavior, performance. And 3 behavior subjects: green living consumption, green business consumption, green official consumption. All of the indicators total 56 factors. We calculated the 56 factors then get the green index. The green index awareness is more than 68. The green consumer environment, we got a score more than 60. The green consumer behavior, including living consumption, business consumption, government consumption, we found the lowest is only 49 because of the heavy traffic, the pollution emission from the traffic, and a huge package e-commerce. And energy conservation, emission reduction in Beijing looks nice because no factory in Beijing. We got a score. Beijing Green Consumption Index is 6,936. That means Beijing is at a stage of transforming from the extensive consumption to green consumption. This is our solution. That's all of my talk. I hope it can help you to understand the Chinese economic growth and Chinese life and China, in China, the sustainable development. Thank you for listening.
I'd like to move on and introduce our next speaker, Ken Ross. He's the CEO of Genetic ID, and as well as being very involved with his company, he's also become quite popular as a public speaker. And he's going to be sharing with us some research that he's done on the sustainability market, consumer attitudes and behaviors. So we're going to see what's going on in the U.S. It's a really nice juxtaposition, I think, of the two talks. So, Ken?
Do we have to switch over?
Oh, yeah, let's just...
This is not research I've done. This is summaries of research that's been done in the U.S. on some of these topics. While Vicky's doing that, one thing I thought would be interesting to note is that the presentation I saw about a few years ago by Stephen Chu, who's now the Energy Secretary. At that time, he's a Nobel Prize winner and he's head of the Lawrence Livermore Labs, was discussing energy consumption. Of course, in the U.S., if you went from like 1970 to 2000, of course, we've gone like that. But as Bob said, if you look at California kind of went like that at around 1980, plateaued in terms of per capita. The point that he was making, of course, is that in the U.S., we have 5% of the world's population, but we use 25% of the Earth's resources. So if China and India together were to follow this curve, we would need 5 Earths to support a level of a standard of living that was equivalent to the U.S. standard of living. So the only hope for the Earth is that China and India follow the California model, that they use policy and they use technology, etc., to lower energy per capita energy consumption, and then we can have a higher standard of living for all, and yet not drain the Earth away of all its resources. So it's very heartening to hear there's this level of consciousness and policy and awareness and a real drive for energy and sustainability in China. So I congratulate China for taking a lead in that area. So similar to the issues in China, we have a lot of issues in the US about attitudes, about sustainability, and really ultimately it comes down to, while people may say a lot of things about their support for green and the support for sustainable products, of course sustainability means a lot more than energy consumption. Are they willing to pay for it? Because most sustainable products, not all, but most are more expensive for a variety of reasons. Ultimately, they're really not more expensive in terms of total costs, externalities, but in terms of cost to the consumer, they certainly are more expensive. And that's critical for us to understand how consumers view green, sustainable products and how we encourage them to consume more of those if we're really going to move to a more sustainable economic model here in the United States. So first, let me just give you a little bit of background on my company, which is called the Global ID Group. Global ID is a company that is dedicated to supporting the production of safe, ethical, and sustainable food. And we have offices in 4 countries. It used to be 5. We used to have an office in Japan that we just sold about 4 months ago. And that office actually, we had did organic certification also in China. And that company that bought our Japanese office, called Bureau Veritas, is very much interested in expanding our footprint in China for organic certification. And they are still a licensee of genetic ID, so we still have a strong relationship with them. But today we have about 105 employees in those countries, again, focusing on issues related to the things I mentioned. But we basically do 3 kinds of things. We do testing, we do certification, and we have software and services. Our testing is focused in the area of non-GMO testing, testing for genetically engineered ingredients, and we're one of the leading companies in the world for doing that. We do a number of other kinds of tests, but we also focus on what's called food authenticity testing. And that's both on the level of DNA, is this species of fish what it's really supposed to be? But there's also lots of other issues. Is this olive oil really 100% virgin olive oil, or is it diluted with some other kinds of things? In terms of certification, we're the world's leading certifier for non-GMO, which makes sense. We've been doing that the longest. We invented non-GMO certification. But we also do sustainable and ethical agriculture certification, food safety certification, and other kinds of certifications. And finally, we are very involved in something called the Non-GMO Project, which is a collaboration with the organic and natural foods industry in the United States, where basically the major companies in that industry, such as Whole Foods and Nature's Path and others, realized that if they didn't start to really verify that their products were not being contaminated with GMOs, eventually their products would be so contaminated with GMOs they would lose the ability to say they're non-GM. So the organic standard does actually not allow GMOs, but GMOs have been drifting into organic and natural products. Well, some natural products are 100% GMO because there is no legal standard for natural. But in organic, despite the fact that there is a legal standard, there are some loopholes in that standard that were undermining their integrity in terms of GMOs. So today we have, it's taken many years to get off the ground, but if you go to Whole Foods or you go to Everybody's down the street, we'll see virtually hundreds and if not thousands of products that carry the Non-GMO Project seal, which says Non-GMO Project Verified. And Global ID Group is the exclusive provider of the system for verifying. It's called the Product Verification System for the Non-GMO Project. And we currently have verified about 3,000 products. We have 3,000 more that are lined up to be verified. And eventually we think we'll be verifying about 30,000 products and 75,000 ingredients on an annual basis. This verification is very, very rigorous. They have to submit to us every product, every ingredient, where that ingredient is made. The ingredient manufacturer has to tell us every single plant that's used to manufacture that. And we have to inspect those plants, and have to provide proof of testing and other kinds of things. So if you get a product with that seal, you can guarantee that that is non-GMO. What you can't guarantee is that it's GMO-free. That word has no scientific meaning, actually, because of the limits of detection and testing. And even products of the Non-GMO Project seal could have a tiny amount of contamination because it's almost, unfortunately, unavoidable in the world. But so little that it's not something to be concerned about. So that's a little bit about what we do. So let's talk about sustainability and the issue of converting sustainability into added value. And I'll just say that this presentation was originally done for the International Food Technology Conference, and it was a presentation to supermarket executives from around the world. And it was really talking about the sustainability, something you should be doing and thinking and emphasizing when you sell products in your stores. And how do consumers look at that, and is this something that really is important today? So that's the perspective we have. So we want to talk about what is sustainability, are consumers looking for sustainable products, are customers willing to pay more for sustainable products, what are the options for labeling those products, and basically what are the risks and rewards of labeling. And while in China they talked about 6 labels, in the United States there are over 300 what we call eco-labels. Wow. And so there's a real issue around confusion among consumers. There's an issue about real estate on packaging.
Yeah.
There's an issue about the integrity of labels and what they really mean, so we'll get into a little bit of those things. So we've all probably heard this various definitions of sustainability. A couple that I like are to meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Another one that I like is improving the quality of human life while living within the carrying capacity of supporting ecosystems. I think between those two pretty much say everything that's all-encompassing about what a really sustainable product is. And there are many dimensions to sustainability, and of course green and sustainability are pretty interchangeable. I think there is some differences in how I would describe the two. Green always tends, I think, to be more oriented towards energy savings and maybe some more odd, but when we talk about sustainability, you get into the issues of agricultural sustainability, preserving the soil, water systems, and so there's some pretty similar, but I think it's a little broader. So in terms of a definition of the dimensions, of course you have the social dimensions like labor practices, working conditions, community impacts of manufacturing, of agriculture. You have economic dimensions, and then environmental dimensions, certainly biodiversity, pollution, renewability, and recycling of resources, and then preserving those ecosystems. When you look at this in terms of the food industry, you have very specific issues around child labor, migrant labor, and forced labor. There is still, believe it or not, forced labor in the United States. There's recently some agreements among some of the large fast food companies around tomato production in Florida. And there, in essence, was slave labor in Florida around tomato production. So it's invisible to us. We don't see it that often. It's not written about that often, but we actually have those issues here. You have housing and healthcare issues, of course, then schools, community development, social stability. So all these things can very much be impacted by practices within the agricultural industry. And it doesn't take that much emphasis to actually make a huge impact on people's lives. I visited a palm oil plantation and processing plant in Indonesia. And this was actually a pretty well-run plant that had a lot of community support that they provided, and a village actually was right next to, with schools right next to the plant. They had no ear protection, and a plant that was enormously noisy. That would certainly within a year or two people would lose a lot of their hearing, and that's something that's so easy to do. So a lot of these things don't take that much effort; they just take some awareness. And so certainly you have water and land pollution issues, deforestation. Our company is actually the third largest social and environmental sustainability certification organization in the world. And that's for a small little company in Fairfield, Iowa, but we certify over $3 billion of soybean production from Brazil along these dimensions. And one of the dimensions, of course, is protecting the Amazon. So none of the soybeans from Brazilian soy producers that get exported to the EU can be on land that's cleared after 1994. And they have to document that with us because that's the international standard. So even here in our little town, where we feel like we're having a global impact on some of these issues. So, do mainstream consumers care about sustainability? Well, certainly there's a ton of research out there now that's even more that's been produced since I put this presentation together. But according to a 2009 GMA, which is the Grocery Manufacturers Association, and Deloitte, Green Shopper study of 6,498 consumers, so a pretty good sized survey, 54% of shoppers interviewed consider sustainability to be one of their decision-making factors and are leaning green. That's pretty significant. That's not a small number, that's a very large number of consumers now really consider this to be an important issue. There was a real acceleration of this when we had the energy crisis and $150 oil prices, and everyone all of a sudden realized, global warming and climate change and limitations of the planet, they really could feel it happening in our pocketbook, and all of a sudden we are one planet. We are a small planet. There are limits to growth, and we were starting to feel them, so I think that really accelerated people's awareness of these issues. So the study also found that 95% would buy green, 63% are actually looking for green products, 47% saw green products in stores, which was good, and 22% bought a green product. Well, 22% might seem like a small percentage out of 100%, but 22% is actually an enormous number. When you have 22% of consumers exhibiting a certain behavior, particularly in the food industry, that's earth-shattering. That means there's a major tidal wave of consumer change that's underway. Do people know what percentage of all food sold in the United States is organic?
20%?
Nope. 5%.
But it's been growing like, what, is 15%?
Well, it's slowed down a lot. Now it's more in about the 8% range. But still, 5%. But I said the 5% sounds like a small number. That's a $30 billion industry. And it's an industry that's created entirely new players like Whole Foods. That's changed the behavior of almost every other supermarket chain in the country. Does anyone know who the #1 seller of organic produce is?
Walmart.
Walmart. Why?
Not in Fairfield.
Not in Fairfield. Touche. But why? Does anyone know how many Whole Foods there are in the country? It's about 300 and something. There's 3,000 Walmarts. So according to a company called Landor Associates, which is a very prominent branding corporate consulting organization, they know that ethical consumption is one of the most complete and speedy revolutions in consumer attitudes that have ever been witnessed. Basically, it's a tidal wave of change. It's happened very, very quickly, and it's really changing consumer behavior. So in 2008, they found that 78% of US consumers said they will maintain or increase the level of spending on green products despite their concerns on the economy. So at the time when we were in the lowest depths of our economic recession, it looked like the Western financial system was on the verge of collapse, still people said this is important enough to them. I won't go through all these dimensions, but basically globally conscious consumers believe purchase decisions are at least as important as votes. So people are starting to realize the power that they have in their pocketbook. And believe me, the supermarket industry, which is a $1 trillion industry, executives are looking at their sales numbers virtually on a daily basis. They have tons of analytical software that looks at every possible trend, every category, and they're analyzing that every day. As a matter of fact, Walmart actually backed off on its commitment to organic and has kind of retreated a little bit because it wasn't doing as well in their stores as they thought it might be. But the reason they put organic and more green products into their stores is they found that 25% of their consumers are what are called LOHAS light consumers. LOHAS stands for Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability, LOHAS. And those consumers are very important consumers, and there's kind of a fanatical LOHAS consumers, which would define a lot of people in this room, and there's LOHAS light consumers, which have a preference for these products. They'll buy them on occasion, but would you believe that 25% of the Walmart consumer is a LOHAS light consumer? Well, they found that was the case, and you'll find, and of course that's why Walmart has made this huge commitment to sustainability and has impacted the world in a very profound way by doing it, both in their architecture and their energy design and the products and on and on the manufacturing, etc. Not as strongly as in organic food, because they had hoped and they had pledged that they were going to sell organic food for 10% above the cost of conventional food. It's not possible. Couldn't be done. They thought even with their buying power, we're Walmart. We can make anything happen. We can squeeze a penny out of a stone, but you can't produce organic food for 10% more than conventional food because it's real food. Real food costs a little bit more. That's just the bottom line.
Well, you got to pay the certification fees.
I'm not going to go into detail on these next couple of slides, but there's another study that looked at what's called the new consumer. And the new consumer is this emerging consumer that is a much more sustainability-oriented green consumer, and again represents somewhere in that 20 to 30% kind of population of the U.S. But it's a growing portion of the consumer population, and more young consumers are more of these new consumers, greener consumers. So the trend is, if you're not on this trend and you're not moving in this direction of addressing this new consumer, you're really going to miss the boat. And of course, we see that in the most mundane stores now, offering plastic versus paper or eliminating plastic bags, and just a million different things that are going on. Matter of fact, I was at a conference called the Sustainability Summit for the supermarket industry, and the most mainstream folks got up there and talked about the things that they were doing, and it was very, very impressive. A chain like SuperValu having zero waste stores. Well, a zero waste store, it's an amazing accomplishment that a supermarket could be zero waste. And what do they mean by zero? Any food that was not sold ended up at a shelter or a soup kitchen or something like that. All the cardboard recycled, on and on and on. And zero waste, I think, means like 98% efficiency. But that they were able to do that, and they did that in a couple of stores, and their goal obviously was to roll that out over time. So just on and on about things that people were doing for water and things that people were doing for packaging. And they didn't get into the GMO issue, that's too controversial, but just about everything else kind of was up for grabs. So consumers do care about sustainability. Sustainability is quickly becoming a core consumer value. It's not something that's on the edges now, that's a fringe value, it's a core consumer value. However, consumers are looking for sustainable brands that are authentic. There's a lot of, quote, greenwashing that goes on in this field, and consumers are becoming very wary about being tricked or misled around these issues. So brands ignoring this shift in consumer attitudes risk long-term brand erosion. And I would say today, matter of fact, our company, we have some investment from a venture firm in Minneapolis, whose main partner is the former CFO of General Mills. And when she first invested and started coming to our board meetings, we'd be talking about these kinds of issues, and she'd say, yeah, this is all well and good, but General Mills, they don't care about any of this stuff. And I just pulled out a little article that talked about the Chief Sustainability Officer of General Mills, who had just been hired, and all the things that they were doing. So, and she had only been out of that business for maybe 3 or 4 years. So in that time frame, just a massive shift. There isn't a single major Fortune 500 company that does not have a chief sustainability officer or someone with that equivalent responsibility. So when you're talking about sustainability and you're talking about sustainable brands and consumers, what is authenticity in the consumer's mind? Well, first of all, they want to know that sustainability has become a core company value. They don't want something plastered on top, or some ad that shows cows in a field grazing when it's made in a factory in Brooklyn. They don't want to be tricked and deceived and marketed and all that kind of stuff. They want to know this is really a core consumer value. And I can tell you, for Walmart, this has become a core consumer value. We had someone on our board who used to work for Walmart and knew the current president at that time, and they came in basically and said to the managers, we're doing this. This is the real thing. If anyone isn't behind this, you can just leave now. This is not just the next management fad. We're changing our entire corporate culture. And they have to a great extent. Not nearly as far as some of us in this room would like them to go, but them going 10%, as with organic food, has a huge impact on the world. They want to know this is a company engagement from the top down. It's a long-term commitment, not just something superficial. There's accountability and transparency that's built in. They want to know that you're tracking what you're doing, you're telling us about it, and you're not hiding things from us. We want to be able to know what really is going on. And these are all important things. So it has to be substantive, meaningful, and measurable. And talking to a supermarket executive, if you're not doing it that way, then don't do it. It's going to cause you more damage to do it the wrong way than to do it the right way. So in terms of long-term commitment, it's making sustainability an integrated part of all future thinking. Sustainability is a systems issue. It's not a single item issue. You have to approach virtually everything from a systems analysis point of view, kind of cradle to grave analysis to really do it right. And people who do it superficially, they do something, they shoot some, then someone does some analysis. Well, actually, turns out if you buy a hybrid vehicle and you actually do all the calculations of what extra it costs to manufacture, you're actually using more energy than if you didn't. I don't know if that's true in terms of case of hybrids or not, but those are the kinds of things that ultimately you're going to get bitten on if you don't really do it right and do it deeply and think deeply and do the analysis about how you're approaching it. For example, Stonyfield wanted to improve its packaging and reduce its footprint, and so the first step was that they eliminated the little plastic top. I can't even tell you the hundreds and thousands of tons of plastic that saved. They got all kinds of feedback from it. So what are you doing? I love that I can reuse the thing. It's what, and they said they just educated their consumers why they were doing it, and they actually offered to send you tops if you wanted to use it for your to store your stuff. But this is why we're not doing it. And of course, eventually, the entire industry went in that direction. So you have to make these long-term commitments, and you have to be ready to educate your consumers, and you have to just go for it. You have to involve your entire supply chain. To say, we have, again, our certification standard is called Proterra. It's very prominent in the soybean industry, but we've also been working with companies to create a consumer-facing Proterra seal, and our philosophy is that we're not going to certify anyone who's not certifying their entire supply chain, because they have a container of Ben & Jerry's ice cream that says fair trade, but that fair trade refers to the coffee beans and the rest of the 37 other ingredients doesn't say anything about. That's greenwashing as far as I'm concerned. Hey, it's great that it's fair trade chocolate or coffee or vanilla beans, and that those farmers are getting an extra 10% premium or whatever. That is great, but that's certainly deceiving the consumer to make it as if this is a fair trade product, as far as we're concerned.
Is that a true example, Ken, about Ben & Jerry's?
Ben & Jerry's is a pretty socially responsible company, even though they're now owned by a big multinational. So it doesn't mean that a lot of their dairy products all really come from Vermont and are probably pretty good, but they're certainly not certifying, making any claims about their energy use in their plants, their water recycling. It's not making any claims about that. So no, I wouldn't say don't go out and dump all your Ben & Jerry's. I would say go out and dump all your Kashi natural products. I don't know how many people saw that, the big dust up about Kashi. We've known about this for years, but Kashi, which sells a lot of organic products, also sells natural products. What they don't tell you is their natural products were made from 100% GMO. So any of the soy or the corn and those products were 100% GMO. They finally got caught and exposed by the Cornucopia Institute and had a huge damaging social media firestorm around Kashi. So and people are actually dumping their Kashi products because they were tricking and deceiving their consumers. A great example of a long-term commitment is Marks & Spencer. Marks & Spencer is an English company. It's a department store. They sell a lot of food. All their food products are private label. They don't sell actually anybody else's food products. They make all their own products. They have something called Plan A. Why do they call it Plan A? They call it Plan A, they say, because there is no Plan B. If we don't save the planet, there is no Plan B. What's Plan A? We have to do this. And they created a 5-year, 100-point eco plan that they report on every year. It's a very long-term commitment. They've since updated that several times and have improved it and added points to it and changed some of their metrics. And it's a very metric-driven. That's an example of a long-term commitment. And Walmart's, I would say, is a good example of long-term commitment. So we say it's substantive, meaningful, and measurable. We're meaning, again, avoid greenwashing. Consumers have become skeptical of claims. If consumers don't see it, then there's no shortage of NGOs who will point it out. So people have seen things as dramatic. In the case of palm oil, someone burning themselves in front of the Unilever headquarters. I think it was a monk over this issue because the monoculture of palm oil in Asia is awful. And there's stealing of indigenous lands, and there's tremendous pollution, and it just goes on and on and on. And to Unilever's credit, they kind of woke up and they led a huge initiative to create sources of sustainable palm oil, and they have committed to using 100% sustainable palm oil in the next X number of years. Now, these changes can't be made overnight, but basically we're at a point now, there's a lot of people who are watching, and if you're a corporation and you think you're going to get away with one of these kind of practices, it's unlikely. One day someone, a Greenpeace boat is going to be parked in front of your whaling thing, and it's going to hit the social media blogosphere. As I said, it's better to do nothing than do something superficial, questionable, or improvable, and brand damage can be significant and long-lasting. When this thing on Kashi surfaced, it actually, the Cornucopia Institute wrote a report called Cereal Crimes, and kind of reported on this issue. There was also pesticides as well as GMOs in their cereals and some other cereals as well. And there was about kind of a blip for a couple of weeks, and then it kind of died down. And then this store in Rhode Island decided, well, hey, if this is the case, I'm taking out the Kashi products. This one little health food store, and they put a little sign there saying, we've removed Kashi products. This woman took a picture of that sign, posted it on her Facebook page. Within a week, it was viral all over the internet, and Kashi was getting hundreds and thousands, probably tens of thousands of comments all over the blogosphere, and particularly on their own site. They were letting people post things such as, you have poisoned my family. I trusted you for 10 years. I have small children. I will never buy another Kashi product ever again in my life. I don't care what you ever do. When you're a brand manager, that's probably not a good thing to say. And there was comment after comment, that vituperative, that upset. When you make a pact with a consumer on your brand and you violate that pact, it is hard to ever win that trust back.
Especially when it's food.
Yeah, especially around food, where people have a lot of
And
emotion.
especially when they put that whole branding advertisement of how wonderful they are.
That's right. And I challenge any of you to look at anything Kashi has put out for the last X number of years and find the mention of the fact that they're owned by Kellogg's. So they are actually part of a multinational, food conglomerate, but they put out the image, we're 70 people, that's what they say, who work in this small town, we've been the same thing for whatever, we're committed. And they were tricking their consumers. And we actually, honestly, warned Kashi about this a couple of years ago. We said, you guys, if this ever comes out, this is going to be a disaster. And they,
It's going to hurt Kellogg.
Yeah. Mary, there is a organization that's called something like Make Kellogg, GMO free, or something like that. They say, we want to take a positive thing. We just want you to stop using GMOs. And that's all they're dedicated to. And, yeah. So here's the classic signs, 10 signs of greenwash. Fluffy language. Green products versus a dirty company. Again, advertising eco-imagination with GE, and I'm sure GE does actually a lot of good things, but they sure have lots of polluting factories all over the world that are not doing great things. So, you're really taking a risk when you take this 1 or 2 products, or what's 5 or 10% of your business, and try to say, aren't we wonderful, when the rest of, you're basically consuming the earth with the rest of your business. Suggestive pictures, again, how many of these Nature Valley bars. Nature Valley bars are the worst, trashy, kind of, gunky, sugary food, but they're using just marketing to make you think that it's some kind of health food. Not health food in any way, shape, or form.
The pastoral picture, this this thing is done so slowly by hand, and when it's done by this incredible mass-produced.
Yeah, the cows in a little barn, and you can imagine at night they're singing to the cows and they're sleeping together, and when it's actually some huge, hog containment thing or a stockyard, and there was a big suit against 2 of the largest organic milk companies over that exact issue. That's what they were portraying, and the organic standard says actually you have to pasture cows a certain amount of time. And in fact, the way they accommodated that is that in their big containment facilities, they had a little concrete porch, about 10 by 10, that the cow could walk out onto for about 3 minutes, since there were 2,500 of them. And that was their pasturing. Irrelevant claims, they're saying things that actually have no meaning. It's best in class, just not credible, gobbledygook, imaginary friends, just on and on. No proof. There's a lot of things that just make some statement. Matter of fact, one of the reasons the non-GMO project came into existence is that you could walk through a supermarket and find 1,200 non-GMO claims that people were making on their packaging without any explanation about what did that actually mean. Did you test it? Did you just get a letter from your supplier? Just tell me it's non-GMO and that's all I want. And so, oh, here's a letter, it's non-GMO. And so that's what the industry felt. We had to clean it up, we had to create a standard, we had to create a verification program. And then finally, outright lying. So are consumers willing to pay more for sustainable products? Again, according to a survey, 51% of consumers are willing to pay more for products with social and environmental benefits even during these tough economic times. Not that different than China in many ways. Another study said a significant minority of committed and proactive green shoppers, these kind of LOHAS people, are willing to pay more for green products. However, the larger potential population of shoppers that lean towards green want price and performance parity for sustainable products because it's not their dominant purchase driver. So the holy grail for a green product is that it actually is not more expensive, and then it's a no-brainer for any consumer. Let's put it, most consumers would buy those products over less sustainable products if they was price parity. So that's where we'd all like to go, and it may be possible in some categories and not possible in other categories. Certainly unlike for the food. Another study found that a third of consumers are willing to pay up to 20% more for a sustainability benefit. Again, very similar to what we found in China. Consumers will pay more for sustainable products when their value is clearly defined through communications, packaging, brand narratives, or experiences. What's important about this is that it's just not enough to have a sustainable product. If you're not doing a good job of communicating the benefits of that sustainable product, then you're losing the driver for why a lot of consumers would be willing to pay for more. Consumers really understand the story, really understand what you're doing, really understand the benefit, then they will pay more. And so it's your job to communicate that. And so contrary to what I said before, here's the example of Ben & Jerry's actually doing a good job with their vanilla toffee crunch about explaining what the sustainability benefits are in that particular product. So you have advertising, you have in-store materials, which basically look at point of purchase is what most consumers actually look at. Public relations, stories, the internet, your website, and all these things combined are communication media that you can use to tell that story. And you've got to make a commitment to doing that if you want consumers to pay more for those products. One of the companies that's in the non-GMO project, and the former president is on our board, is New Chapter Vitamins. How many of you have ever taken New Chapter? New Chapter is a fantastic product. They're very socially responsible. Their vitamins are organic and are all whole foods, versus most vitamins which are chemicals made in factory. And their products are pretty expensive, but they are the #1 selling vitamin in Whole Foods because consumers trust New Chapter. They know the story. They're incredibly effective about telling about where their products are sourced and all the policies that go behind it and their social responsibility and all those kinds of things. And consumers probably pay double for a New Chapter vitamin than they might pay for a bag of chemicals. So, but if you don't explain the difference between a bag of chemicals and a food-based vitamin, then no one's going to pay for that. So finally, you have sustainability labels, and you have the issues around again, hundreds of labels. Energy Star, again, USDA organic. Fortunately, when I say there are over 300 sustainability or eco labels, most of those are actually around either organic, biointensive, or biodynamic. You take those three categories, a lot of the global, I'm talking about globally, a lot of those labels are related to that. So there's not that many that are, are other kinds of labels, but still enough that most executives, most manufacturers are really concerned about label pollution, they would call it. That and consumer confusion and how much they can fit on their product. We have, with the non-GMO project, we have companies that are on the board of the non-GMO project that are really wrestling with how much real estate they can give to that label because they have their organic label and they have, they have, of course, a nutrition label. But I mean, they're literally, on some of these packages, there's 6 or 8 labels, kosher, and all this other kind of stuff. And at what point do they all become kind of meaningless? But I can tell you that, for example, Hain, where they have a product called Garden of Eatin, E-A-T-I-N, chips. Anyone ever have those chips? Well, they're now all non-GMO project verified. And they told us that their sales increased 20% when they put out their new packaging without label. So we were very happy.
And was that all?
Pardon? Garden of Eden. You can get them in every
But
place.
all of them?
All their products are now non-GMO project verified. So, about 100 of those eco-labels, I said, apply directly to food. Consumers are looking for trusted labels to guide them in their purchasing decisions. Some NGOs, such as, anyone have some ideas who are renting out their name? World Wildlife Fund basically rents out their name. The Rainforest Alliance, if you pay them enough, you can pretty much get their label on things. It's not that there's nothing that they do, but they will do some fairly weak, fairly superficial programs and let you use their label on that. They've done some good work also. They've done some tremendous work with Chiquita Bananas and the whole banana industry, United Fruit, really important partnership, and so has WWF. But there's more and more people who are really becoming concerned about how close they are gotten to industry, both those organizations, and the fact that they're willing to make some pretty serious compromises to get those guys to work with them. So some companies are creating their own programs, but it's very difficult for consumers to assess their effectiveness. So, you know, when you see some brands putting their own label, you know, World Planet Friendly, and who's behind that? Well, we are. You know, and well, what does that mean? Well, it means that, you know, we printed that label on our package. So, you know, no one knows what it means. So people are looking more for third parties. So food producers are very concerned about space on their packaging. As I said, seal fatigue. You can see this is, I'm not sure what this is, but these are all these little shelf toppers with Nature's Path products for the non-GMO project. So 40% of consumers view third-party certifications as important. Certifications vary and influenced by category. So some are, you know, carry a lot of weight. Fair trade is pretty well accepted and does a lot of good work. Consumers prefer independent organizations as providers versus the government or the company making a product. So there is a role for NGOs, there is a role for third-party certifiers in all this. So, in conclusion, does sustainability add value to products? Yes, it's authentic, independently verified, and well communicated. But the bigger question is whether any company can afford not to be embarking today on this journey towards what I would call true sustainability. So there's a demand for it in the US, and it's up to now for our industry to satisfy that demand. Thank you.
I don't think it quite came out. I was the design architect for this building, but I wouldn't call myself a designer of this building. That implies I was responsible for all of the systems, and there was an amazing group of people who designed the systems in this building. And I want to give them full credit, not to take it all for myself.
Jonathan, can you speak up a little bit?
Okay.
Can't hear you out here.
One of the goals for this conference is to discuss the subject that there must be a transformation of consciousness in order to truly embed sustainability in our companies and our societies. And a recent study concluded that 75 years from now, rather 50 years from now, 75% of the buildings in the United States will be buildings that have not yet been built. And so what we understand is that buildings can have an enormous influence upon our consciousness. And in fact, if it's the case that a half a century from now, 75% of the buildings that are on the planet in this nation do not yet exist, we can have an enormous impact upon expanding consciousness by slightly altering the direction of the construction and design of our buildings. So let's take a look at that. Maharishi revived the ancient system of architecture in harmony with natural law, which is called Sthapatya Veda, or Vastu architecture. Most of you in this room are very familiar with the subject, and so I'm not going to really give you a proper introduction to the subject, and those of you who are interested in it can find much more information online at maharishivastu.org. But the term Sthapatya Veda is one of the 40 aspects of Veda and Vedic literature, the basis for the curriculum at this university. And one of the 40 aspects is the structuring or establishing aspect of Veda, which is the total knowledge at the basis of creation. And so we can say that Sthapatya Veda is basically the architecture quality of nature, the blueprints at the basis of creation. The word Vastu is used as a synonym, and it's defined as a structure according to natural law. That is, any structure which is structured according to nature's own architecture. It's also defined as those balancing and harmonizing laws of nature that maintain nature's structures. So a structure of nature has some stability, it has some relationship with the rest of the cosmos, and those laws of nature that cause that to happen we call Vastu. And so if we can apply those principles to the design of buildings, then we can say they have the quality of Vastu present in them, and so we call them, for short, Vastu buildings. Maharishi found that this process of applying nature's own architecture to the design of buildings existed within a tradition in India. It wasn't, he found, applied in complete purity in any one locale, and so he underwent a lengthy process of reconstructing it, meeting with the exponents of the different traditions, different families in different parts of the Himalayas. And so we signify that which he reconstructed to make it fully effective, to make it fully based in natural law by putting his name in front of it. And so we speak completely of Maharishi Sthapatya Veda or Maharishi Vastu architecture to signify those principles by which this building, for example, or the Arjura Center or the Dreyer building were designed. And the definition of it is a real dense definition, but I'll read it slowly. It's architecture and city planning that's in accord with the solar, lunar, and planetary influences on the Earth, and with reference to the North Pole, South Pole, and equator, connecting individual intelligence with cosmic intelligence, individual life with cosmic life. Well, what does this mean? Vastu is a structure according to natural law. Following the rules of Vastu, we can create buildings or cities that are structured according to natural law. Now, why is that something to aspire to? Why can that have an impact upon expanding consciousness for the world and promoting sustainability? Well, just as a person who practices the transcendental meditation technique effortlessly grows in creativity, intelligence, and success, so a person who works in a structure according to natural law has better health, more coherent brain functioning, and greater success. And all of these are measurable in objective, quantifiable ways. How is it that living in a Vastu building can expand consciousness? Well, first of all, those of us who are students or faculty here or members of this community have been exposed to the fact that human physiology is an expression of Veda and Vedic literature, that the underlying blueprints at the basis of all of creation are manifest in the form of human physiology as they are manifest in the forms of all of the other structures of the universe, galaxies, solar systems, planets, trees, the cells in our bodies, the molecules in the cells, the atoms inside of them. All of these are projections of the blueprint of nature, and that there's, however, one exception to that among all the structures in the universe, and that is those structures that we make ourselves, which are our buildings and our cities, and we then spend our entire lives, 99% of our time, inhabiting these structures, which are the only structures, as far as we know, in the entire galaxy, which are not structured according to natural law, which are not perfect reflections of the intelligence at the basis of creation. And what's the effect of living in structures not according to natural law? Well, the effect is that we are cut off from the cosmic influences. We do not have reflected back upon us the same blueprint as is the basis for our own physiology, and this causes confusion. It causes a lack of the frictionless flow of creative intelligence through us because the environment is giving us confusing cues. Now, this may seem an interesting hypothesis, but it's completely measurable, and there's good research on the subject. I won't go into it now in the course of a 20-minute lecture, but it's again on the website. And so the model, the hypothesis, is that if we can use the same organizing principles that nature uses to organize galaxies and solar systems and our own physiology to organize the man-made environment, then our consciousness can flow through it. And we know that when Maharishi himself, concluding his research experiment, concluded it by building his own Maharishi Vastu home and moved into it, his response, his conclusion was that my own consciousness is not contained by the walls of the house. It's as though they are transparent and do not inhibit the flow of my consciousness. So that was his own perspective, and it's the perspective of many of us also, perhaps not quite as clearly as for him, living and working in Vastu homes. And this is the reason why he decided that this university had to be completely rebuilt from the ground up using this technology. Now, when this campus was purchased, what those of you who are students here may not know is that we purchased an existing campus of a bankrupt college, and really all that we purchased was some old former farmland and a bunch of buildings. And so then to decide that we were going to tear down the buildings and reconstruct it was a rather dramatic and very non-business-like decision to make. That is, to destroy your only primary asset. And yet, we did it, and what we have found is that year by year, since we began to do that, since we began to tear down the buildings on this campus that were not built according to natural law and to begin one by one to build new ones, that this university, whose population had been stagnant for years between about 500 and 550, began to grow very rapidly. It grew for 15-20% year after year. The average growth in these 15 years since this initiative was begun is over 10%, which is quite phenomenal among all universities in the United States, perhaps unparalleled. And there is really no outside explanation for it. And so his decision that to be more successful, we have to inhabit buildings that are aligned with natural law seems to be borne out by the experience of this institution. Now, this technology makes use of the cosmic influences on the surface of the Earth, mainly the sun, which is the strongest influence of natural law on Earth. And we use a series of principles that I won't go into in detail now because almost everybody in this room is familiar with them, that we orient buildings and we orient certain key pieces of furniture so that we are facing the influence of the rising sun, which is an influence of awakening and enlivening our connection with natural law. And so all the new buildings on this campus face east, face the direction of the rising sun. And it is easy to measure statistically the effects of different building orientations upon the quality of life inside of the buildings. The second principle is that just like in human physiology where there's a right place for heart and a liver and a kidney and lungs, there is also in a building a right place for different activities such that the differing qualities of the sun's energy at different times of the day will promote different activities inside of the house. And so there's a right place to cook and a right place for convivial activities and a right place to study. And so houses are laid out, as is human physiology, so that the functions occur in places within that body in ways that will support the smooth functioning of the entire structure. And other elements that are included are proportion and measurement according to natural law, and understanding the influences of the environment so that a building designed according to natural law is placed in a location where the laws of nature in the environment will support success. And finally, another quality of nature's own architecture, which isn't really, as far as we can tell, referred to in the ancient text, but which we have incorporated now for reasons that will be apparent in a minute, is to build sustainably. That is, to build in a way that does not waste resources, that maintains. In fact, if we give a definition of sustainability, two commonly accepted definitions are acting so that we produce the best outcomes for both humanity and the natural environment now and in the future. And another definition is maintaining balance between man and nature. And the definition of Vastu, as I shared with you earlier, is the balancing and harmonizing laws of nature that maintain nature's structures. And so we can see that really there is a complete intimacy between the basis of sustainability and Vastu. And so we also see that when we look at the structures of nature, as we look at the universe, there is no waste. There are no junk piles. There is no inefficiency in construction in nature. And so really it is a principle of nature's own architecture to build with perfect efficiency. And so that is sustainability. And so we have recognized that and incorporated it as a principle in Maharishi Vastu architecture. And this building is one of the first very pure expressions of the result of that complete fusion, which we hope is just the beginning of many, many, many more. And when we say that decisions made in Vastu, just as decisions made after meditating, will be spontaneously more aligned with natural law and therefore will automatically be more sustainable. This is something which is a crying need within the field of sustainability because we have been bumbling as we have invented this field of sustainability. In each of the decades of the short history of sustainability, we have discovered that decisions that we made that we thought were brilliant in the prior decade were actually misguided because they were not based upon full knowledge of natural law. So in the first generation, one of the things that was embraced was building structures out of polyurethane. Because it was a fantastic insulator and therefore allowed buildings to be incredibly energy efficient. What we didn't initially know is that it outgasses and poisons the occupants of buildings, and if the building catches on fire, the fumes given off by burning polyurethane will instantly kill any occupant in the building. And so we decided that we have to be very careful about the materials used in sustainable buildings. And we made buildings very, very tight, and then we discovered that when buildings are very tight and therefore more energy efficient, that the toxic chemicals in the indoor air environment build up and create ill health, and we had to invent this term sick building syndrome. And so then we had to layer upon that a mandate for high quantities of fresh air and every 5 years, ASHRAE, the American organization that sets standards for mechanical engineering, has to increase the percentage of fresh air into buildings in its national standards because it discovers that the prior standard still was not sufficient to create good health inside of buildings. And so I can give many more examples of this, and global warming is the most obvious one. And so what we find is that to achieve sustainability through our intellect, through discovery, is a very, very slow, very inefficient way of creating sustainability in the world, and that a much more efficient, not a replacement for, but a perfect complement to intellect-based sustainability is to also awaken nature's intelligence within us so that we spontaneously are making decisions which are more in accord with natural law and avoiding having unintended consequences, which is a principle which is well known. And so that is the reason why, if we can occupy buildings which are themselves a manifestation of the same intelligence of nature that our own physiology is, that we can have only nourishing effects upon our occupants, and this solves the dilemma of unintended consequences. And so I think we can understand that on a very profound level, sustainability and Maharishi Vastu are two, sustainability as it is commonly understood, and Maharishi Vastu architecture are two expressions of the same impulse in nature, and each supports the other to create what we call Vedic green. And when sustainable design incorporates Maharishi Vastu design, then it really expands and voids environmental errors and expands consciousness to ensure sustainability. And so that is our focus now in building Vastu buildings, to completely incorporate the principles of sustainability as people like Professor Gamble and others at this university and elsewhere are uncovering them. And we are very proud of the largest Vastu building built to date in the United States, 2,000 Tower Oaks Boulevard, a 200,000 square foot building, which is 9 stories and which is LEED Platinum, meeting the highest level of sustainability in the United States, and which is also built according to the principles of Maharishi Vastu architecture, as well as this building. And these are Vedic Green, which is a new certification label that we will be unrolling within this year. And we'll talk to you, Ken. So we understand that Maharishi Vastu buildings expand consciousness in their occupants, and we encourage this technology to be adopted by all entities, all companies, all nonprofits, all governments around the world, whose goal is sustainability and life in harmony with nature. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. David Goodman. We just saw a wonderful series on some of the applications of higher consciousness or developing consciousness in terms of consumer trends in China with Dr. Yu, and also with Ken Ross in the United States. And we also had a look at how consciousness is creating architecture that can support greater sustainability, and also looking at some of the metrics of sustainability. In our next section, we are going to look at case studies in the Iowa area and also in the Fairfield area, and I think you'll find it quite interesting.